welcome to the B4 Business Brunch. How are we all? We've got Kelly Peters from Data Basics UK.
Morning.
We've got Neil Lawson-Smith from CIS Limited.
Hi.
And we've got Paul Ballinger from STL Communications. How are we all?
Morning. Very well. You?
Yeah, good. You all been very busy?
Yes.
From 4 o'clock this morning.
What was the prompt for that, Paul?
Your email, Richard.
Oh, don't believe you.
It's true.
Anyway, well, good to see you all. And so this morning we're going to be talking about, are you ready for next? So getting the home office in particular ready for whatever's this world's got in store for us around the corner. So I'm going to ask each of you 3 questions, and we're going to start with Paul. So you're going to talk us through the security considerations for working from home.
Yeah, when we were looking at pulling this together, it's about it being beneficial to a wide spectrum, isn't it? So it's what is next? That's a great question for the office. Is it a hybrid? Is it all back in the office? I think people have got different views and opinions. But security is not just about locking things down. I think for us, security has been about educating our users in the office. You know, the amount of attacks, the amount of spam now is far greater, that everybody's hybrid working or home working, and we've just got to be a little bit more educated about it. And it's been preventative as well, and that saves a lot of time in businesses. So it's a constant education. We email out once every month, just making people aware of these things to look at. And if in doubt, send it to your IT people. They will check it out and they will send it back very quickly. And therefore, you're not doing any damage to the business.
And from your point of view, Kelly?
I would echo that. I think the reality is that the office of the future is, I think it is a hybrid model of working at home and working in the office. And I think anyone that's responsible for compliance now has a wider remit to make sure that the staff, if they know something's gone wrong, they know who to contact, that even if they're at home or at the office, they can send an email, they can pick up the phone and they can raise the question to say, something's a little bit off, can you help me? So it's educating the staff of that. It's educating your customers that if they feel there's a security issue, that they know who to contact, and they don't see any difference between whether you're at home or your staff are in the office. So I think it's that awareness piece, which I think is really key, and then actioning that as quickly as is possible.
And Neil, before you joined us this morning, you had a bit of a security issue, I think, not of your own doing, but
no, just worldwide with a recent Chinese attacks on Exchange servers. So it's one of those things.
Just to illustrate the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is taking advantage of the change, and this is all about change. And wherever change happens, that's where the gaps in the security evolve and develop. And that is why the most common thing that you hear with any security breaches, oh, I didn't realize you weren't covered. And that is the big thing, is that things are changing, things have changed. And it's a good time to sit down and reassess and just say, actually, are we covered? And to get that third-party input to help see it from a different perspective, because there are organizational changes, there's technical changes, and it's very difficult to encompass that all in just one person's shoulders. But it definitely is a hybrid model for the future, and it is therefore hybrid security and a need to understand security in the office in the traditional sense, but also the security at home and how that stretches out and still has that peace of mind for the whole organisation. It's a tricky one now, for sure.
And just maybe going off piste a little bit, so bear with me on this one. You know, if I'm running a business, and I'm running a business from the office and also got staff at home, cost-wise, to me, you know, what's a typical business looking at? Significantly more costs, or does it have to? Can it stay pretty reasonable?
No, it's exactly the same as it was before. I mean, if you even just picking up on Neil's point, you go back 5 years, if you were to have a conversation with the IT director of a business or a network manager and saying, oh, 30% of our staff are going to take their laptops home, he would have absolutely been terrified of the risks that would have been bought. You know, they would have been left on trains, they would have been lost, they would have had coffee thrown all over them. But now you've got backup as standard, people are better educated, we're using legacy equipment for longer, software is more continuous throughout the platforms, and, you know, quite frankly, our teams are better educated. So we've technology has come a long way, and our ability to use it to benefit has come a long way as well. So it means no change at all, which is fantastic for the user because the interface is exactly the same. So whether they're working from home, dare I say we're back in Costa in a couple of weeks or whatever, and how they're working in the office, the experience and the utilization. I know, getting
it's not open till late, by the way, so you'll be getting in
yeah,
there at 4 o'clock in the morning.
The user interface is exactly the same, and therefore the benefits, you haven't got to train everybody twice.
But I suppose your job is doubled up to a certain extent. Getting through this period, there must have been a huge amount of communication and correspondence and education with your clients to get them set up. So from your point of view, you've had to absorb some cost, I should imagine, in terms of time.
Yeah, but it's a differentiator, isn't it? I mean, Kelly and Neil and I were speaking last week. That's the bit that we add. Buying the product or the service is only part of the jigsaw, if you know what I mean. And if you're not accepting the fact that you've got to just care for your customers more, and can you ever communicate with customers too much? Possibly you can, but without that communication, there's no relationship building anyway. So there's no negative at all. I think the fact that ensuring customers are benefiting more from the services just gives you as a supplier that peace of mind as well. I know that's Neil and Kelly were thinking the same things as well.
And I think when we discussed last week, Paul, we were saying that actually responsiveness is what customers want now. Whether you're at home or whether you're at the office, if they make a phone call, they contact you via your web chat or they email you, it doesn't matter where you are, you need to be responsive to that. Completely. So you need to make sure that you have that your staff are educated in terms of the comms messages, that you have the right level of connectivity to support that level of responsiveness. Because 12 months ago, when there was a massive digital change, and I've never seen such a digital transformation as what I did in March through to April, the decisions were made were phenomenal, but that's almost come and gone now. We're now in a point where this is the world we live in. So if I make a phone call and I'm a customer, I want a response. I'm not really bothered where you are, as long as I get the response I'm looking for.
Yeah, completely agree.
And on that point of connectivity, obviously tied in heavily with security, the connectivity considerations, Paul, and obviously that's a huge one for you.
Yeah, I think the same. The question we've all got to ask ourselves is whether you're streaming music or you're watching a vid or you're downloading an application or you're on one of these calls, how long can our businesses transact with our customers without that 100% reliable connectivity? And the cost now is just beyond belief. We couldn't operate. Weirdly, the phone seems to be the second choice of mediums. But yeah, it's true. Neil, what do you think?
Well, I think it's gone a whole full circle with the data comms. We've been pretty poorly served, and now this is the norm. But I do think people don't assess their data communications as seriously as they should. And one of the monikers we like to put with it is like the electricity syndrome. Is you normally come into your office, you turn the light on, you expect the light to come on, and every day you expect to come into your office and use internet. And it can be a very weak link, and I think people don't think about that being a single point of failure. And so much hinges around the data connectivity and having a plan B, particularly where you are distributed around the country, as Kelly and Paul said, that's going to be taken as the norm. But really, have people thought just how their business now depend on technology, which perhaps they weren't thinking. It could be out for an hour before and it wouldn't hurt them, but now big sections of business stop if that happens. So I would definitely think it's a time to sit down and reassess and to make sure businesses understand where those little weak points are, where those single points of failure are, because they may be working today, but guaranteed at some point they'll let you down. Do you find that, Kelly?
Yeah, I think that's a really true point. I think a lot of us are now delivering so much at home that we've possibly not really considered the level of connectivity that we have coming into our house, and if it's appropriate, for our business needs. We've all got our own streaming needs for, you know, Netflix of an evening, but during the day when we're doing video call, or we might be delivering training, we might be delivering audits, your customers don't expect your picture to go fuzzy or for you to like disconnect or say, sorry, I've got a really bad download, I can only have my voice on. They want to be able to receive the same level of service they've had, whether it be video or in person. I'm always going to want in person, but I don't think that's the way that we're at. So certainly for your teams, it's, you know, what broadband do you have coming into your house? Is it sufficient for the job that you do? Could that connectivity have any impact on the systems that you are running? And could that lead to any kind of data disruption or kind of even corruption, really? So for me, connectivity is really key, because I think we've taken it for granted being in the office. Like you said, you turn on the switch, it happens. But at home, what's your plan if something goes wrong? Are you going to phone your IT team, or do you have to phone up your own BT support and say, yeah, my fiber's gone down? You know, what's that the impact on your business because of that?
Well, this is it. And a lot of people don't realise when they sign up for broadband at home, it's a domestic service. It was never geared up for business use. So BT will say to you, or not necessarily BT, but it could be anybody, well, as long as you're getting even a tinsy bit, it's in the contract terms. And to some degree, that's the rub, is that people never thought about a business level service at home. You know, you can get it if you want to organise it and pay for it, but a lot of people say, oh, well, it's just broadband is broadband. But there, as we all know from our technology viewpoint, know that there are many flavours and ways of solving this problem. And whether you're looking at alternative mobile backup connectivity if your broadband fails, for key people in the organisation, and that's something that people don't necessarily realise even is available. And there's a whole discussion to be had about, well, you know, how are we going to operate? How are we going to be resilient? How are we going to carry on? Because it's got a whole lot more complex.
And something that Kelly mentioned just then was customer facing meetings, and we're obviously all missing that face-to-face contact with our customers, and nurturing those relationships is hugely important. I know it's something that you've missed a lot, Paul, having that face-to-face contact with your customers. So what would you say about customer communication going forward?
Oh, well, we've maintained the mantra that I'm a massive believer in, that communication's just got to be appropriate. But as Kelly was saying, whether the customer wants to speak to you on email, on video, on Teams, on Zoom, on Google, whatever it is, or on chat or web chat, you've got to be prepared for it, and you've got to allow them to contact you in the same way. And that doesn't make any difference whether your team's based at home or in the office. The customers, it's interesting, isn't it? Just listening to ourselves speak, you're thinking, yeah, 12 months in, the customer now expects the level of service to be exactly nailed down. And I'm sure we're all considerate of people working from home, but it's not like an excuse or a reason anymore. It's, hey, we've had time to shift and change now. I just want to place an order with you. Thank you very much indeed. Or I want to get my fault sorted out. And I'm expecting that same fixed time as it was previously. And that's we've had to deliver that, like all businesses have to do.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, Neil, you carry on.
I was going to say that, Paul, I think you're absolutely right, and you hit the nail on the head that there's an expectation there, principally because circumstances have changed. Businesses have had to go online, be digital, and sort of Bill Gates must be rubbing his hands together with his book that he had out at one point, explaining that businesses can work at the speed of light if they're all digital, and that's the expectations. Our expectations have got faster and faster, and whether our tolerance and whether that can be delivered is still reasonable, I think so. And it'll be interesting to see, I think, to reflect as you are, Paul and Kelly, that when we get to meet each other again, hopefully not too far away, whether actually people will bounce back and will have as many customer meetings, or they'll actually say, do you know what, we actually do get through so many more meetings because we can still see each other and have that nice, we can see you, we can wave and everything like that. So actually, yeah, I'm still only going to be doing half a dozen meetings, and that's it. I'm not going to go back to doing dozens of meetings a week. And certainly it's been interesting for us as an organisation, where we used to meet fairly frequently around a boardroom table, a little team meeting, and they were happening several times a day. And you do think, we don't have those now, but we're still probably more productive because of it, because we're getting to the point, and some of the questions we're having to solve ourselves or do preparation beforehand. So we're actually finding the business more efficient because perhaps some of those excess meetings have been cut away. So it'd be interesting to see how much face-to-face goes on. I think people will savour it, enjoy it, but I wonder if it might come as a bit of an overload after we've been isolated for so long. We've been in our padded cells for so long. It's going to be kind of a bit full on. So I think we'll all enjoy it, but it will be quite a rush, I suspect.
I think people will take it to extremes. Instead of being offered teas and coffees, you'll be offered a beer or a glass of wine. Just to
I
say,
hope so.
it's only 10:30.
Well, I don't think anyone want to go home, will they? They want to talk because it's been so long and there's so much has happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, probably be even less productive. Kelly, what are your thoughts?
I think for me, what's been really interesting is that communications, whether they be internal or external, we've got different means now of communicating. So us as a team, we use Slack, we've got WhatsApp groups, so you can be very responsive with the current technology to say, I've just had this customer query come in and it's a Slack message, and you fire off, say, please can you respond in this way. So we're using new software platforms to support our communications, and for us, we've also introduced the web chat, so our customers can get a much more instantaneous response from us, because we think that's important. For me, from a data protection perspective, I think the biggest thing for me is that the internal comms about your staff being wherever is being cleared. If you think there's something suspicious that's gone on, or your customers are complaining about something, know how to escalate that, and know how to escalate that quickly so you can get on top of it. So you as a owner of a business are not taken by surprise on a Friday and being told, I raised this concern on Monday with this member of staff, why hasn't that been dealt with? So I think for me, it's internal comms, making sure your staff feel comfortable about what and how they can respond to customer complaints or questions. And then your customers feeling very comfortable that they are going to get a response regardless of what medium they reach out to you on. And that's, for me, the biggest risk, is that your comms can come in from social media, it come through a text message, a WhatsApp group, and it's, do you know all the different routes that someone can communicate to you? And do you know how you're going to respond regardless of how that comes through? And that's, to me, is a massive challenge, and I think one we're going to continue to face.
Interesting. Now, we had a meeting the other day with one of the hubs, and one of the accountancy firms was talking about one of the clients that they've got who refuses point blank to go on any form of video call, and is still insisting on face-to-face meetings.
And I think we need to do, I think in the future, I think like Neil said, there are those face-to-face meetings that we have to have. But if customers now are not bothered geographically about where you're based, you've got to give them the options. Do you want it a virtual, or do you want it face-to-face? And you have to do the same for your customers as your client, your staff. Is what's the type of meeting that you want? Is it virtual, or is it going to be in person? And you need to be flexible with that, because we've proven we've got the platforms to support it either way.
Yeah, good point. The one thing about the virtual meetings is it's absolutely speeded everything up, whereas face to face you have to factor in travel time, don't you? Well, so we would have been having conversation with prospects and customers this week. If they would have got a meeting next week, it would have been concerning that somebody's diary was so open, so it would have been 10 days out. Now, because everything's virtual, you could just fit in a 20-minute meeting. So you can probably do twice as much in a week than you would have done previously.
Well, exactly. And that's why I wonder whether that efficiency, if people are having all these new systems and data and queries coming to them, whether they will actually prefer to have the virtual meetings maybe on equal balance with face-to-face meetings, because they can get through it that much quicker. I mean, the traveling is a significant effect, and I do think that, or I do hope actually, that the roads stay a little bit quieter. It certainly wouldn't be a problem. I don't know how it was today with the first day of school returning. I imagine it's probably a little bit of mayhem, but it certainly, for my own staff, I can certainly speak for my own staff, they have not missed the commute at all, either the time or the cost. But what's interesting is I did find that people who did do the commute had some downtime where they could think about whatever they had to think about for half an hour or an hour, and they actually missed that part because they literally come out straight into their home office, and they're working. There's little time for thinking. But I think there's a culture change that goes with this as much as the culture of us video calling and having those and the way we're communicating, as Kelly's highlighted, Paul's highlighted. So that culture change really does mean that I think businesses have to be a little bit more circumspect about downtime for staff, that, that they have their time to have a break or a sit back and a think and a cup of coffee and a biscuit or whatever, to try and keep the mental health going and to really deal with the onslaught. And it does feel sometimes like a digital onslaught. And as much as I'm a fan of digital stuff, even I just think, oh, not one more email, please.
Or not one more video call.
Well, one more video, yeah, that's exactly.
What's wrong with the phone?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I do think people value the human relationship. I think they where you have the isolation, I think that's, with all the digital technology we have leveraged it to stay in contact. So it is great to see people and not just have voice calls on phones, because it's great to see you guys. It's great to see the backgrounds and to see our friends as cats and all this sort of stuff. I think there's even from online quizzes occasionally, which aren't happening that often now, but just to try and build that team building. But I can see that's a team building is the one thing with the customers, and that Richard, I'm looking forward to the B4, particularly for the events that you run. That's been a big gap in my diary. I'm really looking forward to those evening do's when you can learn and socialise and engage without the pressure of the business during the day. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think on the 31st of March, Neil, we got the networking, so that'll be good. I know Paul enjoyed that last time round. Just a few things I just wanted to mention, just in closing, really. You used the word tolerance, Neil, of cats and things like that. And Paul, you said, I think you used the word earlier as well. In lockdown, first time round, it was all quite funny. And do you think there's going to be less tolerance going forward of kids appearing on screen and cats appearing? Do you think that that's going out the window, or do you think that adds an interesting dynamic to the calls?
I think we've all got to be aware that when you're on a call, whether it be video, audio, or even face-to-face, you're representing your brand, aren't you, and your identity. I think, as Kelly said earlier, that clipping and clopping of calls and, oh, I can't be on video because my broadband, that's sort of frowned upon now. We've had long enough to sort it out. People expect you to be professional. So yeah, probably is. I think we just want to get on and get off, don't we, and get the job done. This is not something where you'd hang around, is it, and chat forever. You do the call, you get what you need, you get off the call, and you move on to your next call. Whereas there's always, like Neil was saying, there's a warm up and a warm down on a face-to-face. I think the big difference with the face-to-face thing, if we can't shake hands, that's what I'm going to miss. I think there's just something about customer connection, whether it's at the beginning to introduce yourself or at the end to thank them for their time. That's been the weirdest thing about meeting somebody face to face, even in lockdown, where we've done social distance meetings. Just that physical touch is not there.
It's all about relationships, isn't it? It's all about relationships with our staff, our customers and our families, how things have changed.
Yeah, you feel like you're missing out on a part of something that we've been very, very used to for a long, long time.
Just on that point, I mean, talking about meetings with clients and how we're getting through a lot quicker. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you've all. Maybe I'm more than most, but we all have the meetings where you've gone and you're not in the diary for some reason, or someone's got it wrong, and the amount of time that wastes if the client's messed up or you've messed up. I find the amount of meetings you set now is a much higher sort of conversion rate from setting the meetings to actually having it. and we get, as again, it all accelerates the amount of stuff we get through. And are we ultimately going to, sorry, I don't know on that point whether you felt that, you know, the meetings you set on, invariably you have them all, you don't really get too many missed meetings, and I think you're all nodding your head on that one. But as we're getting through more work, and Neil, you talked about sort of digital overload, are we going more towards a shorter working week, do you think, generally? You know, there's only so, the next step, if we're getting through the work we've got to do quicker, is either do more of it and get even more overload, or do we actually pull back and start saying, okay, you can get 100% of your work done in 60% of the time, have 2 days of the week off and go to shorter working weeks? Can you see that coming?
I think as long as we're
Some countries.
as long as we're confident that our staff are getting regular breaks, my biggest concern is that I can have 6 or 7 calls in one day, which I would never have done pre COVID, because I would have had more time. So whilst I'm doing more meetings, am I having a better quality of a day, you know, and am I feeling more knackered at the end of the week because I'm trying to fit in so much and feel I've accomplished more? So I think for me, the challenge is going to be, we need to make sure that our staff, and I think Neil made the point, are they taking a coffee break? Are they having a quick biscuit? Are they, you know, checking in with their teammates to see how they're doing? As long as we've got that balance of, we're not trying to squeeze every possible second out of the day because we have video, and we're not damaging our overall mental health, then for sure. But we have to be asking ourselves that as business owners, are we asking too much of our staff because we've now all sitting in front of a computer 8 hours a day? Or should we be encourage them to take regular breaks, even if it's just to go out into the garden or put their head out of a window and get some fresh air?
No, I get that, and I'm sure most responsible employers are encouraging their staff to do that. But will it come to a point where you are getting through enough work, you're growing as a company, and the next step is maybe a shorter working week, and to help recharge the batteries?
Depends on the business and on the customer, doesn't it? I mean, if you're working, you know, if you're working a 4-day week and your customers requiring service on a 5-day week, you're going to be at loggerheads. It's how you cover that off, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm obviously talking about allocating staff over those. Just some sort of staff, but anyway.
Definitely, I think Paul's right about customers have a certain expectation of the traditional working week. But I do think that probably we'll end up working more flexi time weeks. So, for example, because we know people have been working at home, right, even before the pandemic, but principally in the pandemic, we made sure that our doors were open from 8 o'clock, and we didn't shut them. We went from 6 o'clock and we changed it to 8 o'clock because we knew people were wanting to work outside the normal working hours. So we staggered our working days. And we had some people that said, yeah, I don't mind starting slightly later and finishing later, and that way we could extend our coverage hours. So we kind of flexed it sort of sideways more than into the weekend so much. So we kind of wanted to preserve that family time and still not impinge on people's private lives, because that's still something I think fairly sacrosanct. But certainly being a flexible approach to employment is absolutely essential if you want to recruit and retain the best staff, because you know it's I think everyone's looking for good staff and the ability to be self-starters and work from home. That does take a little bit of discipline, and getting the sort of caliber of staff that feel comfortable with that is really important. And I think modern businesses would want to embrace the mental health aspects of flexi working and the ability to think outside the usual traditional realms of where we came from. So that's the new next.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
good points. It's almost like we live at work now, isn't it? That's the difference. We used to work from home, and now we live at work.
Interesting, yeah.
That's a lovely phrase. I like that.
It's not a lovely phrase.
I don't think much of your bedroom, Paul.
It's a scary
Get that in
phrase.
XSTL t-shirts, Paul.
I know. One day I'll come on one of these calls and I won't have a branded shirt on. I promise you.
We live at your home next. That would probably be brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Paul. Anything you'd like to sort of conclude with?
No, thank you to Neil and Kelly and your good selves and the team there. Thank you.
Lovely to see you all again.
Well, maybe I'll get one of your branded t-shirts one day. I'm in the right colour, but
16 and a half neck.
Oh, come off it, Paul.
15 and a half.
I prefer to think 15, maybe.
Okay, I'll get you one.
Yeah, I heard that as a promise there.
We're good to see you all. Thanks very much for your time. We'll see
Yeah,
you
take
soon.
it easy. Nice to
Take
see you.
care.
Bye.
Cheers, Kelly.
Take care.